Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano, and I'm going to tell you why all athletes should be on keto. So that's the title I used for this video, probably, and it's a bold claim, okay? You don't have to do this necessarily, but the argument I'm making here is why, if you are an athlete or somebody who prioritizes fitness, you should do keto at least once a year, or at least doing it for a couple months out of the year, okay? And here's why. Well, actually, no, I'm going to roll my intro first before I tell you why. So, why should all athletes do keto, okay, in some capacity, okay? Here's why. Essentially, when you are in the keto state, which, by the way, doesn't mean that you have to eat this or that or low protein or high fat or something. It simply means that you have to eat low carb, right? You simply eat carbs that are not going to raise your blood sugar. So only greens and vegetables, and you don't eat usable carbs like, oats, rice, fruits, okay? Starches, sugars. That's what keto means. It doesn't mean that you have to eat anything. It just means that you have to avoid one thing, sugar. So, why should you at least do this in some way, shape, or form? Because two reasons that are heavily related. Number one is the ability to perform in a low blood sugar environment, and the second reason is metabolic flexibility. So, metabolic flexibility means that your body is better able to use fat and carbs. Now, like I said, a keto state means that you're not eating carbs, but your body at that point says, okay, we don't have any carbs coming in. We have to get all of our energy needs from fat. So your body is very happy to do that. If you think about it, our body stores a near endless amount of fat. It's very clear that our body is ready to use that, and it prefers to use that fuel because we can store so much of it. Our body only stores about 2,000 calories worth of carb. Most people have to eat that every day. If you're not eating that every day, you're out of fuel. That's it. So if you go a day without eating, you're screwed. And if you think about that on an evolutionary scale, how often would we be eating 2,000 calories worth of white rice every day? Very infrequently. At least not up until the agricultural revolution. So, up until the last couple hundred years ago. So, all nature arguments aside, what I'm saying is your body is going to be forced to get all of its fuel from fat, which it is happy to do. And when we're talking about carb fuel, your body can still make carbohydrates as energy and use them through a process called gluconeogenesis. So essentially, it's going to make carbs and only the amount that you need from excess protein and fat, which is great. But when we're talking about fat, it's a better fuel. Most people throw out the argument that it's 9 calories per gram, which means, you should avoid it because you can go over your calories more, right? You can gain weight. If you think about it, that means that fat is literally a more effective fuel. You can get more energy out of 1 gram of fat than 2 or 2.5 grams of carb or protein. So fat is literally a pure energy fuel. That's what its purpose is. And of course, there are other purposes for fat on the body, like it stores nutrients and it can store toxins to get them out of the bloodstream. But in general, fat is a pure energy resource. That's what its goal is. Our brain thrives on fat. It's made almost entirely of fat. Our cell membrane is made of fat. Most of our body is made of fat. Almost half of that being saturated. I believe it's 40% is the number they say is saturated fat in most people. That's actually composing their body. And besides that, we can store seemingly endless amounts of fat in terms of calorie numbers, okay? If you think about it, even if somebody's like 10% body fat, they have enough fat on their body to last them with zero food altogether for a couple months. Like, it's crazy. So, of course, that's not necessarily the healthiest thing to do, but you get my point. So, fat is, in essence, a better quality fuel. At the same time, it's training your body to use that fuel better, which might come with obvious benefits of, getting ripped. But from there too, your body can start to produce carbs and use them more effectively. There's lots of studies showing how carb usage in athletes that are both fat adapted and carb adapted is the exact same, which is crazy because people who are fat adapted are not eating any carbs, yet they're still using the exact same amount in all these high performance studies, okay? One of which is by Dr. Jeff Volek, who I'm going to show a clip from very shortly, okay? But I'm not done here. So when you think about this, it doesn't mean you have to eat, keto all the time. But if you keep this metabolic flexibility and bounce in and out of ketosis and start having a day where you eat carbs, then perfect, because now your body is primed to use them better because it senses that it was from a time where carbs apparently were scarce, right? And your body wasn't using them frequently. So it amps up how effectively it's going to use it. This is what your body does. It's a survival machine. So you're better able to use carbs, better able to use fat, which is now your primary fuel, right? Think of fat as like gasoline. If your body's a car, fat is gasoline, and carbs are nitrous oxide, right? They're a quicker fuel. They're a luxury fuel. But if you use them too much, it's going to burn out your engine. But if you use them just in the right amount, you're hitting new speeds, okay? You can still get a nasty speeding ticket with fat. That's a phrase I really like. But you can still hit 200 kilometers an hour with gasoline. And that's what fat is. But that extra kick, that luxury fuel is carbs. And it burns out quickly, right? That's the purpose of a luxury fuel. It's effective quickly. This is why our body secretes it when, there's a cortisol rise, because your body thinks there's a bear attacking you, right? It's trying to get away, fight or flight. That's why cortisol rises with glucose, which is called a glucocorticoid. That's what it is. It's meant to be a catabolic hormone. Break down emergency fuel and use it quickly. That's the purpose of carbohydrate. So fat is the primary fuel. So this is essentially the gist of, why you should consider the whole keto state. And from there, you can throw in carbs strategically on certain times. But the main message that not many people know, because some people know about metabolic flexibility, and that isn't really enough to sell them, right? Not that I'm trying to sell you anything with this particular video, but the point is, when you are training in a ketogenic state, right? Because the first couple days is going to be hard. You have to do this for 3 days before you start to feel way better, okay? And after there, the longer you do this, after a couple weeks, usually 4 to 8, you get adapted, right? Fat adapted. And fat adaptation is where you can start performing even better, and especially when your blood sugar drops. So for a lot of athletes, right, especially if you've ever played a sport, right, towards the end of a game, if you played a team sport or any sort of individual sport where it's like a time limit, okay, towards the end of the sport, you tend to get more gassed, and you tend to get more tired, and you might feel a little bit of like you're hitting the wall, right? This is a common thing with endurance athletes, marathon runners, cyclists, triathlon, all that stuff. Keto state and training in it not only gets you the better metabolic side of things, the better energy usage side of things, you get a better ability to perform when resources are scarce. Now, of course, you have fat all over your body, like even if you're ripped, so resources aren't scarce, but blood glucose drops, right, which will come from using up carb fuel if you're in a carb metabolism. So let me play this scenario out here, okay? You're coming from a carb background probably. If you play a sport and then towards the end you get a little bit tired, it's because you have lower glucose in your blood and your body's trying to pull it from your muscle glycogen stores and your liver. And maybe if you're metabolically flexible, you will perform better at that point when you're used up your carb fuel. But if you're not, you will get tired, or you might get the illusion of fatigue, because oftentimes the body will receive a signal from the brain that, hey, blood glucose is low. So it automatically, you start to feel this sense of fatigue. And it's not because you actually have fully zero carb fuel left in the tank. It's not because you have fully zero blood glucose. It's not because you have fully zero muscle glycogen or liver glycogen. It's because your body senses a huge drop in carb fuel and then tries to get you to be tired, because it's essentially trying to prevent you from gassing out completely. So it's a survival technique, technically, but it's not a result of being truly at zero carb fuel. And this is what some athletes will call bonking, right? That's what Dr. Jeff Volek is going to refer to in the clip that I'll throw in here soon. But hitting the wall is often a result of the brain perceiving a drop in blood sugar rather than the blood sugar being zero. So when you train in this keto adapted state, you get a better usage of carbs, you waste less of them, you use a better quality fuel more effectively, and you jump between those two fuels more effectively. And then, even if you do get to that point where you're low in carb fuel through your blood glucose and through muscle glycogen stores, because you're not going to have liver glycogen as much in a keto adapted state, essentially, from that point, your body is used to training at a low blood sugar state due to training in keto at any other point. So, like I said, oftentimes, you're training the body to perform better in not at that zero, absolute zero level of blood glucose, but at the drop of blood glucose. And in a lot of studies, they've shown that athletes who tend to be the best of the best, the Ronaldos, the LeBrons, all those guys tend to be able to perform when it counts. The clutch players are the players who can perform better when they're in a low blood sugar state, right? That's a pretty interesting way to put it, now that I think of it. But that's essentially what it is. And nobody's going to hit pure zero blood sugar. It's very low to hit that when you are, it's very hard to hit pure zero muscle glycogen, right? But most athletes will gas out mentally because their brain is trying to get them to stop because it doesn't want them to die, okay? That's what your body is trying to do, is trying to survive, and it takes everything very seriously. So, I'm going to throw up a clip here from Dr. Jeff Volek where he explains this a little bit more technically and probably with a little bit more precision than I was doing here, because I'm trying to keep this very palatable even for the layman, listener. But overall, keep in mind, the best athletes can perform when they're at even the lowest levels of blood sugar, because oftentimes it's not the lack of blood sugar, it's the brain's perception of a drop in blood sugar that prevents an athlete from performing at their best. And the best of the best can perform even at that low blood sugar, and guess what your one-way ticket is to getting there and getting the ability to train at that level? Keto metabolism. And the cherry on top of that is that you get a whole better engine to perform it if you decide to at least mess around, dance around with keto, right? So, watch my other videos if this is interesting to you. Enjoy this clip from Dr. Jeff Volek. This guy is somebody I very much admire, and his work is fantastic, and I want to give him credit because, he's a very huge resource for people interested in keto performance. But I took this from a seminar he spoke at, and all the, links to credit the people who he was working with, they're also there, but enjoy it. And it's also on double the speed, because I guess that's the speed I was listening to it when I was when I was listening to the seminar. It was at double speed, so whatever, quicker time for you. Thank you for watching. Anthony Romano, peace.
But this is really truly spectacular, and I will just add, this is a unique form of neuroprotection, but for athletes, this is what bonk proof is. I mean, hitting the wall is an energy crisis in the brain where it doesn't have adequate glucose. And even though you may have some ketones available, I do believe there's some adaptation period that's required, because if you've hit the wall, I don't know if anybody in here is a runner or endurance athlete, and have you hit the wall? It's a very memorable experience, right? It's sort of a catastrophic type fatigue. And it's primarily an energy crisis in the brain. And yet these keto adapted athletes seem completely protected from it. And I think this is the underlying reason why, and physiology behind that newfound neuroprotection. I just want to mention, though, while the brain takes up ketones readily, so does the heart.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So that's the video. Go watch another one. Peace again.